Hold up, looks like we've got a new trade to announce. No, not trade. I meant Trey. Trey?
Trey?
Yes, Trey. Because the Lakers got themselves a Trey from New Orleans, but it is not Trey Murphy. I'm talking about Trey Jemison III.
Trey?
So the Lakers waived Quincy Oliveri this past week and gave his two-way spot to center Trey Jemison. They have signed Trey on for the next 2 years, with next year being Trey's last year of two-way eligibility. Now, in a vacuum, I think Trey is an intriguing big man prospect, but I am absolutely also gutted for Quincy Oliveri. I just didn't think that Quincy was the player who should have been waived in this signing, and I also don't think that the Lakers needed to necessarily rush into making such a move. But with that said, Trey is a Laker now, and so in this video, let's take a deeper look into his strengths and weaknesses. First, let's run through his general player profile. Trey Jemison is a 25-year-old center. He is 6'10" in height with a 7'2" wingspan, but Trey's biggest selling point is the fact that he weighs a crazy 270 pounds. To put things into perspective, he weighs 5 pounds more than Jonas Valanciunas. Last season with the Memphis Grizzlies, Trey Jemison averaged 7.4 points, 5.8 rebounds, 1.2 blocks in 25 minutes a game over 23 games. Now, the Grizzlies were in tank mode last year with most of their roster injured, so Trey actually got a fair amount of opportunity. So much so that he even got to start in 14 games down the stretch for the Memphis Grizzlies towards the end of the year. And in those 14 starts, Trey Jemison averaged 10 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks on 57% from the field and 88% from the free throw line, hitting 16 of 18 free throws. Having said that, Trey Jemison was kind of in a looter in a riot situation towards the end of the year with the Grizzlies. But those are some pretty solid stats nonetheless. Alright, so now let's take a look at the tape and assess Trey Jemison's strengths and weaknesses. And while we transition over to that segment, if you guys could please do me a favor and like this video, comment down below, and most importantly, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Alright, TJ3's strengths.
Trey?
First and foremost, Trey Jemison is an absolute tank of a player. He's bulky, he's brawny, not Bronny James, he's brawny, and he looks like he's 270 pounds of straight muscle. He is a physical specimen who knows how to leverage his strength and physicality on both ends of the floor. Offensively, he really knows how to eat up space in the paint and can clear out players easily to gain an advantage below the basket. Even if he mishandles the ball or has to pump fake and gather, Trey is just such a gigantic ball of mass that it's hard to really push him out from inside the paint. He knows how to seal his man off very well and gets really nice post position against smaller mismatches or even against bigger centers he feels like he has a weight advantage over, which is most NBA players. And once Trey starts backing players down, he typically finds a way to push them all the way underneath the basket, and opposing defenders most of the time just have to hope that Trey turns the ball over or flips up a bad shot, because on most occasions he is going the direction he wants and ramming through you. Now, in line with his strength and massive body, Trey is also a very good offensive rebounder. He's very active and attentive even without the ball. He knows how to position himself well in the paint, and even if it's crowded and there are lots of bodies in there, as I mentioned before, he really knows how to carve out space for himself, bang down low, and fight for loose balls. He does a good job of tracking the ball, and if he sees a runway ahead of him and has a head of steam, he can really come flying in for some really fun, explosive putback jams. In 23 games with the Memphis Grizzlies last year, Trey averaged 2.8 offensive rebounds, which is just a tremendous offensive rebounding average for any big. To put things into perspective, Anthony Davis averages 2.7 offensive rebounds in his career, and Trey Jemison averaged more than that last season. Now, on top of his bulky frame, Trey also has some surprisingly good athleticism and explosiveness for how much he weighs. He gets off the ground pretty quickly and is a pretty powerful finisher jumping off of 2 feet. Because of this, he's a pretty good lob threat and vertical spacer who can surprise teams with his quickness and sheer force at the rim. He always tries to go up strong and loves to rock the rim with very secure two-handed jams. And once he's up there, there are very few NBA bodies who can impede a flying boulder like that. Otherwise, prepare to feel the pain of 270 pounds crashing down on your body. Good luck waking up the next morning. In addition to being a solid lob threat, Trey is also a good off-ball cutter. He knows how to make himself available in the paint and cut into open spaces in the dunker spot. Just like Rui Hachimura, he runs the baseline well and knows when to track the ball handler for easy corner crashes or buckets right at the rim. And once he's at the rim, he's also a pretty smart and controlled finisher who can do a little bit more than just straight catch and dunk. What's nice about Trey is that he doesn't get too sped up when he catches a pass. He will use a combination of gather dribbles and head fakes to make sure he first regains balance. And once he goes up, like I mentioned before, he either goes up strong and hammers the ball down with supreme force, or he can also finish with some solid craft and surprising ambidexterity, with some nifty banks off the glass with his left hand at times, reverse layups, and even some mid-range floaters. If you watch some of his highlights, you'll notice that he's somewhat of a weird short hook extraordinaire. In a pinch, he can be used as a post-up big who can easily muscle his man in the post and then throw up a nice, albeit quirky-looking over-the-shoulder hook. Again, it looks pretty awkward, but he's hit this shot enough times that I'd like to just give him credit for just having some nice touch. Having said that, this isn't exactly a shot that a serious basketball team like the Lakers would want him taking. Lastly, Trey is also not a bad passer. He has shown some flashes of good processing skills offensively when he has the ball. He isn't just a straight black hole with tunnel vision who won't pass out of tricky situations. He has pretty surprising vision on the move and can make some nifty passes in the paint, sometimes off of his own dribble. In the past, he's even shown some solid IQ when it comes to being the short roll man, making some nice reads that keep the ball moving to the open man. Alright, now what you've all been waiting for, let's talk about his defense. So defensively, Trey is a good shot blocker. He's not elite, but he's better than average. Trey Jemison's above average athleticism and strength really help him meet offensive players at the rim without fear. For someone who weighs as much as he does, he can get off the ground pretty quickly, and he does a good job of timing his contests and shot blocks at the rim. Watch him here as he stuffs Wembanyama right at the cup on this dunk attempt. Hector Banana Bread, see you later, no bananas for you. He also really knows how to chop his feet well and stick with offensive players and even some ball handlers who pull the ball back beyond the perimeter and then try to attack him off the dribble. And he uses this good mobility to track drivers at the rim and erase their shots at the very last minute, or he uses it to rotate over to help a teammate out as a solid weak side shot blocker. Also, because he's such a rock wall in the paint, he does a good job standing his ground at all times against bigger players and still putting his hands up and making sure he's a deterrent at the rim. And if offensive players try to take it right at his chest and drive into the paint against him, he makes sure to leverage every ounce of his 270 pounds of muscle to make them feel his body and will often stop players right in their tracks and send that shit back. Overall, Trey Jemison plays hard, competes well, and has a really good motor. He's strong and he weighs a ton, but he's also far from a loafing big. Now let's talk about some of his weaknesses. So, Trey Jemison is pretty limited offensively. He's not a floor spacer at all. He doesn't take any mid-range jump shots or three-pointers. When he does put up his mid-range floaters or hook shots, they can come off as looking super clunky. Having said that, he did shoot 84% from the line in 2023-24, which points to at least some semblance of a shooting touch. Also, he can't really put the ball on the floor, and neither should he. He does tend to have some butterfinger hands and can lose the ball pretty easily in the paint. His 55% field goal percentage is also not as efficient as you'd like for a straight cutting, dunking big man. And I think a lot of this stems from the fact that he does a little too much in the post sometimes. He likes to post up too often and throw up these over-the-shoulder hooks and awkward floaters that can be pretty ill-advised for the most part. He's also just naturally kind of boxy and awkward in his movements sometimes. He doesn't have a lot of flexibility. And because of his bulkiness, he naturally lacks a fluidity, agility, and nimbleness that you'd maybe like from your center. So he can move in a pretty clunky, uncoordinated manner. He's also not a great overall rebounder. He's a good offensive rebounder like I mentioned before, but his defensive rebounding could use some work. He averages nearly the same amount of defensive rebounds as he does offensive rebounds, and per 36 wise, he's not even a double-digit rebounder. So hopefully this is something he can improve on, because with a body that massive, you'd think that he'd be able to box anyone out and secure every board near his vicinity. Alright, so let's talk about comps. Who would I comp Trey Jemison to? This is going to sound weird, but I think Trey Jemison is like a Tariq Black and Kwame Brown fusion with a little itty-bitty hint of a lower-end Dwight Howard. So all of those big men that I just mentioned are not only former Lakers, but they are all also built like a rock. They're super strong and physical. They also have surprising athleticism and explosiveness as well. But at the same time, they can all look pretty stiff and clunky on both ends of the court. They've also been known to have butterfinger hands and may fumble easy passes in the paint, and they may not always make the right decisions with the ball in their hands once they get it. So that's my streamlined look at Trey Jemison's strengths and weaknesses. In conclusion, I think Trey is a complete tank of a big man who brings physicality, motor, and athleticism to the table. I think the Lakers are using him as a proxy for a potential higher-end big man in his same mold that they'll try to eventually trade for later. Think other big men like Day'Ron Sharpe, Jonas Valanciunas, Jakob Poeltl, and even a guy like Walker Kessler. While each of them have varying degrees of athleticism and speed in comparison to Trey, they all have similar muscular, bulky builds. And so I think right now the Lakers want to use Trey as the stand-in for the type of big man they eventually want to trade for and see how that works out. Christian Koloko, Jackson Hayes are sort of like the JaVale McGee center for the Lakers, while Trey Jemison fits more of that bulky Dwight Howard mold. So overall, I like the signing. I think it's a solid flyer. I think the Lakers could stand to use some real muscle and girth in the paint. Again, I just wish it had happened in another way without having to have waived Quincy Olivari. But with that said, I do think it's a worthy flyer, if anything, just to see what a too big lineup with a bulkier big looks like in practice settings. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys like the most about Trey Jemison's game? And do you guys think he could actually get a shot to play? Let me know in the comments below, and please let me know you watched by gracing me with your precious subscribe. Thank you guys. This has been Jonathan Hernandez of the Lakers Legacy Podcast, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.